and it harm none, do it thou wilt. That is what's called the Wiccan Rede, and that's what this video is going to be about. But before I get into sharing with you my thoughts and experiences of the Wiccan Rede, if you're new to the channel and you want to become a witch or a Wiccan, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. So the Wiccan Rede is something that Wiccans often say to people, especially when people ask us, are you into cursing? And you know, witches are into evil and they're into all of this bad stuff and all of the stuff. A lot of people who really haven't got a clue about what Wicca is often will come at us and say. And so we say, well, you know, there's the Wiccan Rede, and the Wiccan Rede states that, and it harm none, do it thou wilt. But what does that actually mean when you look at and it harm none? What does the none mean? And is it actually possible not to harm anything at all and still survive at the same time? Gerald Gardner came up with the Wiccan Rede as a way of giving Wiccans some kind of a guideline as to how to practice, because we don't have dogma, we don't have scriptures, we don't have any people up there saying, well, you know, this is what you're supposed to think and believe and do. It's more a guideline as to how to conduct yourself in everyday life as well as in magic. And it's suspected he pretty much probably got it as a version of Aleister Crowley's do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, love is the law, love under will. He probably misunderstood, like a lot of people do. They just take the do what thou wilt part of what Aleister Crowley said without the rest of it, which is actually really important and actually makes do what thou wilt actually really makes sense if you actually include the rest of it, which is love is the law, love under will. But a lot of people like to forget to add that bit and just say the do what thou wilt. So Gerald Gardner possibly also saw that as being an invitation as a free-for-all to do whatever you like, no matter what, and added the and it harm none on the end so that people wouldn't go crazy with it and just start following the ego impulses of running amok, doing whatever you want with it that may be harmful to other people. So what does it mean then to harm none? Because it is a pretty nice thing to aim towards, and it does help us sit back and take notice about our responsibilities as people and also as humans and as a species that is supposed to be the most intelligent on the planet, and how we conduct ourselves with regards to the environment, with regards to other humans, with regards to animals, with regards to plants, and all of the life on planet Earth. It's impossible to harm absolutely nothing. There are religious sects that do really take that on board, and they're even careful where they walk because they don't want to tread on any bugs or any ants that might be under their feet. They'll remove bugs from a stool if they're going to sit on it. So some people do take this to extremes. I don't know of any Wiccans who go to that extreme, but there are sects in India, for example, that do take this non-harming thing to that extreme. So if you want to go to that extreme, then that means you really need to be careful of where you're walking. And I mean, I do this anyway. If I do noticeably see that there's a caterpillar in my way and it might get stamped on, I will remove it somewhere where it's safer for it, that kind of thing. But I'm not going to always be thinking about, you know, is there a bug under my feet as I'm walking continuously going on a walk. It has to be pretty obvious to me that it's there for me to see it, to actually not step on it. So I look out for those things when I'm walking, for example. But when it comes to survival, we all harm other things to survive, because if you're taking harm none into consideration, and if you understand that every living being on this planet has a consciousness, and that even gemstones and geology to some extent has some kind of an energetic consciousness associated with it, then you'll realize that plants too have a consciousness and that they do react to threats, not in the same way we animals do, because they don't have a nervous system, but they still seem to react when they've been monitored. So we harm plants at least to be able to survive. So we're harming something. Often we don't care how we treat plants either when we're harvesting them, because they don't have a nervous system, so we assume that they're not feeling anything. We can't not harm anything all of the time. The idea of the Wiccan Rede is to try and not harm at most of the time. So that's how I see it. We try not to harm. We try really hard not to harm. But sometimes you are harming something in order to simply survive, and other animals harm in order to survive. So it's understanding that you kind of have to be your own judge on this as to how far and where you're willing to go with this. And this comes down to being a pagan means you're responsible for your own morality and your own ethics. There's no deity out there saying, or no people who profess to be in connection to a monotheistic deity saying, you can't do this and you can't do that, and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. That doesn't happen in paganism. You have to be adult enough and conscious enough to be able to have your own ethics and understand this in an adult and mature way. So it's putting a lot of responsibility back on ourselves as to how far we take the Wiccan Rede. So that's something to think about. I can't tell you how far to take it. All I can say is how I take it, and that is I try not to harm. Okay, I try to not harm to the best that I can. And I also understand that we are living in a world where there's polarity, there's creation and there's destruction, and that you need to have both in order to have life. So I respect the destructive cycles of nature and the creative cycles of nature, and understand that I'm part of that creation and destruction cycle of nature simply by existing here on the planet with all of the other beings on this planet who also go through this destruction creation cycle. I try to be just, I try to be fair, and take the Wiccan Rede as something that is important and serious without going really crazy about it and stopping my own livelihood or my own way of surviving in the world without it stopping that. Because if you're sort of looking at harm to the extreme of harm, even going to a job interview and winning a job yourself and somebody else missing out can be harmful to that person. So if you don't want to harm their livelihood by taking the job if it's offered to you, you know, that's how extreme you could get with it, which means you'd end up not going for a job because you're going to harm the people who applied for it that don't get it if you get it. You're not going to eat anything because you don't want to harm anything. You know what I mean? You don't want to go to that extreme. And I was asked how do I feel about, you know, going to extremes on this. Nothing is good in extremes. It really isn't. If anything goes to an extreme in nature, nature tends to, she may go to another extreme to bring it back into equilibrium, but things don't stay in extremes for too long because they can't stay in extremes for too long. You've got to bring them back into an equilibrium in order for life to continue. So I don't believe in going to extremes with the harm none, and I also don't believe in going to extremes with it's a free-for-all, and if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you have every right to curse them. So I'm not on any side of the left or the right in regards to the polarity. I always try to bring things back into the middle and try to understand things in a more realistic and grounded kind of way. So that's my philosophy about the and at harm none, and also my philosophy about pagans having to take responsibility for themselves and not have that institution there telling you what's right or what's wrong. You've got to be adult enough to be able to realize these things for yourself and really live these things for yourself. So that's my advice when it comes to the Wiccan and at harm none. Do what thou wilt. And And of course, if you're wanting to study Wicca in more of a formal way, so that you've actually got lessons that you can do and work through, I do have the 12-month course, the Wicca Mystery Witch School 101. I'll put the link to the details of that course in the description field below this video. If you like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Let me know how you feel about the Wiccan Rede, how you incorporate it into your life, how you perceive it to be, and because I love getting the comments, and I do read them all. So do comment. I'm Sandra from mysterywitchschool.com, and I'll see you on the next video.